Welcome to the next chapter of As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today, I'm stoked to share my conversation with Limbs frontman Austin McAuley. Like so many of these conversations, chatting with Austin was like catching up with an old friend, trading show stories and talking about the music scene that we both love. Limbs just released their new EP, Coma Year, on UNFD Records. Austin talks about the scene in Panama Beach, how he took over vocals for Limbs, and how writing Coma Year became therapy for him. Check out Coma Year, and I hope you enjoy getting to know Austin McAuley from Limbs.
Nice. How's it going, Brian?
There we go. I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm excellent.
Awesome. Down in Tampa?
No, my wife and I finally moved back home to Panama City Beach, so other side of Florida.
All right. Fun?
Yeah, man.
Fun. Florida.
Get my day started, got the coffee going.
Yeah, I just finished therapy and I was like, I have more coffee upstairs. I need to go get it before I jump off.
Yeah. Right on.
Very important.
Yes.
How have things been?
Good, dude. Very good. Just moved back home, like I said, a couple of weeks ago, getting settled in. Just getting ready for another tour coming up. So getting stoked on that.
Yeah, I was looking at the tour dates, and I guess I've moved back a year now, but I used to live in Philly. I lived in Philly for 6 years, and I was like 4 blocks from Kung Fu Necktie, where you guys are performing.
Oh shit! Yeah.
And I was like, damn it, so you guys aren't coming to DC, so.
I know, yeah. Is Kung Fu Necktie, is that a sick spot? I've actually not played it before.
It's a super cool little venue. I've seen some killer shows there. Dillinger played there on their, like, they were playing like small venues like before their big like breaking up tour. And so they played for like 100 people in this like tiny club, and like they destroyed. That was wild. Yeah. I mean, it's Dillinger, so every time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you grew up in Panama City. What was that like?
It was killer, man. I've traveled quite a bit, even outside of the band, kind of been all over the place the last, 7-8 years. And this is always home, man. I've lived in other parts of Florida, lived in Georgia, outside Atlanta for a while, went up super far north to North Dakota of all places for a couple of years. Yeah, it's cold. It's very cold. But yeah, man, I loved it. I grew up surfing and fishing and everything and being on the water. So like, that's always been super close to my heart, and not having it, living in other places, I can definitely tell the difference in myself. So yeah, it's good to be home for sure. Yeah.
That's cool. Those of us who are not from Florida, we think Florida is crazy.
It is.
So, but people stay. So something about it works where people stay, and people move there and then stay. So
yeah, you take the good with the bad. I mean, like all the like memes and stuff, Florida man throws live alligator through Burger King window. Yeah, it's all for sure true. But you take the good with the bad, because where I live here, they call it the Emerald Coast. So the water is just like emerald green almost year round. We have white sand beaches. I mean, it's tough to beat. Yeah, and the weather, it never gets below like 55. So I mean, that's shorts at Christmas time. So yeah, and it's hard to beat that.
That's so funny. I hate that. I like summer's like my least favorite. I'm just like, give me cold weather so I can wear my hoodies year round.
I feel that though. Like living when we were up in North Dakota for a while. I mean, it's bearable most of the year, but there's like 3 or 4 months out of the year where you just don't go outside.
Yeah.
But no, I feel that. I do also enjoy the hoodie weather. Something about feeling bundled up and cozy. Yeah. I get that for sure.
Yeah. That's awesome. What got you into music?
Well, I mean, I come from a musical family, really. My grandfather was a jazz drummer until he went to war in, the 40s. Then came home, still kind of played with a jazz band most of his life, even into his like 60s and 70s. So he was a jazz musician. My dad was a drummer as well. And my mom is a singer, and I credit being able to sing to her for sure.
Nice.
Yeah, so I kind of got it on both sides because I play drums and some other instruments as well. But yeah, I got the singing from my mama for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What got you into like hardcore punk, like underground music?
Yeah, it's funny because I grew up, well, at least on my mom's side, because my parents were split at an early age. But like growing up on my mom's side of the family was a very strict Christian household. So like rock music was the devil, that kind of thing, which ironically enough kind of drew me to it in the first place. I'm like, oh, I'm not supposed to do that. Let's see what this is all about. But yeah, I remember being like 9, 10 years old when Linkin Park first came out, and I had heard One Step Closer like late night on like MTV or something when they still played music videos, and it intrigued me. So like I kind of at a young age went down that rabbit hole of trying to check out rock music and heavier music, and that, like I said, when they put out like Hybrid Theory, that's kind of when I was hooked. And then after that record and listening to it and absorbing all of that, like I was dialed in. I was like, I just want all the screaming vocals because I'd never heard anything like that before. I want all the heavy music because, before that, my dad, raised me listening to like Zeppelin and the classics, Blue Oyster Cult, CCR, all the good oldies. But by today's standards, that's super soft rock,
Right.
So, which is funny because I remember, I was probably in high school, but I remember talking to him one day on the couch about it. And like, what was it like for you when bands like Sabbath and Zeppelin were putting this music out back in the 60s and 70s? And he's like, dude, it was the heaviest shit. Like the heaviest thing anybody had ever heard. Like Iron Man apparently was just like the Satan anthem, like back in the day. Nice. So it's wild to see what music is now in comparison.
It's funny what like grabs people's attention and draws them into like heavy music and what like that scream. Like I wouldn't think about like Linkin Park being like that as an intro to screaming music, but like by the time they came out, I was way deep into weird heavy shit. So
sure.
That was never gonna do it for me. But I'm like, oh, Chester, now he could scream. He had it going on. Like he was there.
Well, yeah, that was like definitely the progression because like I heard his vocals, and then that caused me to look into bands like Slipknot, and then I heard Slipknot, and I'm like, oh shit, because Iowa was just coming out around the same time, and I was like, whoa, this is very heavy. And then I kind of went even deeper into it. I found bands like Cannibal Corpse, and then Black Dahlia Murder started coming onto the scene, and I was like, okay, there's a whole lot more to this.
Yeah. Was there a scene there in Panama for you to like dive into? Something happening locally?
Yeah, very, very much so. And I'm super thankful for that because I think, a big part of my musical upbringing is credited to the scene here in Panama City. It's not what it once was now because, I feel like a lot of small towns, the scenes die and they come back and they die and they come back, that perpetual cycle. But yeah, there was a great music scene coming up. Funny enough, bands like, A Day to Remember and Under Oath being Florida bands as well, they would come to Panama City and like open up for local headliners in the early to mid 2000s. Like a friend of mine posted some old flyers online the other day and I saw A Day to Remember. I don't know if you remember a band called Calico System at all from way back in the day. Dude, still one of my favorite bands. But yeah, it was A Day to Remember, Calico System, Poison the Well, and Under Oath. Like at a local venue in Panama City, like 100 cap room. Like, nice. And having shows like that in my backyard, essentially, I was spoiled for sure to a degree.
Yeah.
But, like we talked about with, exploring different avenues of heavy music, that really just opened my eyes to all of it, being able to just drive right down the street and see that in person. So yeah, I was super fortunate in that regard, growing up with that scene.
Yeah. I remember like high school and it's like every day of the week, there was a show at like a VFW hall and it's like, $3 with your canned good. You go, you see like some headliner and a bunch of local bands and you just like absorb all of it and like indoctrinate yourself into the scene.
Yeah. Every show was a fest, like 15-20 minute sets for all the locals and then the headliner plays for however long until the cops get called or whatever.
Right. Yeah. There was a show. It was like Norma Jean, right when Bless the Martyr was coming out.
Okay.
And there were probably like 8 bands on the bill, and they all played, and then Norma Jean got up and they killed the power to the venue, and they got like 30 seconds into a song and then killed the power to the block, and we're like, well, sorry. And it was like, damn, we just wanted to see that, not these 8 other bands.
Yeah, that actually something similar happened at a show. I think may have been around the same time. I think it was in 2005. Yeah, when did Bless the Martyr come out? Was that 04, 05?
02?
Oh, was it that early?
Maybe.
Yeah, you might be right. But yeah, I remember a venue in Panama City that was hosting a touring show for Poison the Well as the headliner. They were with remember Chasing Victory?
Yeah.
Yeah, still love them too. But yeah, it was Poison the Well and Chasing Victory on tour, and they got like 30 seconds into Nerdy. They opened up their set with Nerdy, you know that.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, they opened up the set, and then like the glass bay windows, because it was way over cap. The glass bay windows had people like standing in front of it, and they ended up like falling through the glass, and then somebody like tripped the breaker somehow, and it turned into just chaos. But yeah, they got to play like literally a half of a song. So.
Oh man.
And they never came back after that either. Like, you guys are too nuts.
What point did you start playing in bands, and were you drawn to playing drums at first, or were you always in that vocalist mindset?
Yeah, it's weird because like in my young life, before the age of 14 or 15, like it was all about drums. Like that was it. That's all I wanted to do. And it's hard to say what really drew me into. I guess watching my mom sing all those years growing up kind of gave me that itch to try it. But I remember the summer after 9th grade, me and 2 other friends at their parents' house kind of started jamming around, and we already had a drummer. My friend Justin back in the day already had a drum kit, and his parents were like super understanding. They like set you guys up in the garage, we'll put blankets up for soundproof, and they're great. And then we had my buddy Keith, who was a guitar player. So I was like, okay, well, I play drums and guitar. Well, what am I going to do? So I just kind of picked up a microphone one day and started trying to sound like Dallas from Under Oath. Yeah. And it sort of evolved from there. Cause at first I had no idea what I was doing, obviously, being in high school. And then, that band kind of fizzled out, and I jumped into another one. And it's funny because there was this band called Answer Me This way back in the day. It was like a high school band, local band here in Panama City. It was my first shot at like really trying to be a vocalist. But I was a replacement for someone else. So the way I kind of got into that was trying to mimic the old guy. Yeah. Yeah. But from there, I sort of started learning about my own voice and kind of taking things in my own direction. And, I tell people all the time too, because like people will come up at shows and be like, hey man, how long have you been doing this? Or like, how did you find your voice in this, that, and the other? I always say the same thing. I always tell them like, well, I sucked for a really long time. And then I sort of just figured it out. So, but yeah, I think it was super crucial though, growing up, like kind of testing the waters at a young age with, like high school bands and just jamming with friends. Yeah. And then, like I said, getting into a band that had already had a vocalist. So I kind of had some ground to stand on instead of just getting thrown into the dark and be like, okay, do vocals, do stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I always tried to sound like Dan from Zayo. And yeah. And I was like, I think I got it. And then I was like in studio and you hear it back and you're like, oh no, that sucks. I do not sound like Dan. It was a good time. Go ahead.
No, you're good. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
No, tell a story. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say too, like in regards to like vocal technique and things like that, and trying to like imitate others. I remember there was a short period of time when like inhale screaming was popular for some strange
pig
reason.
Scream, yeah.
Yeah, because I had heard this band, Waking the Cadaver. Obviously, they're still around and kicking and still doing that thing. But I had heard this band on MySpace called Arturo Gotti, which was like this weird kind of scrammy hardcore band, and the vocalist was like an inhaler. Oh, so like my stupid 16-year-old self was like, oh, maybe that could work. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. And I'm like just trying to take breaths in. And it was awful, but that was short-lived, thankfully. But yeah, I always think about those old days when I had like no idea whatsoever how to use my voice.
Oh man, that's so funny. Speaking of replacement vocalists, how'd you end up in Limbs?
Yeah, no, I knew that was coming. So when I moved to the Tampa Bay area back in 2017, I had a stint in Atlanta, Georgia for a while playing in bands there. Jordan, our guitar player, he and I have been friends for years because he's from Florida originally as well. Jordan and I have known each other for a long time. I had been hanging out with the rest of the guys in the band too, just, from friends of friends and being in the local scene. And then in 2018, I think it was probably, excuse me, it's probably August or September of 2018, my buddy Chris Costanza, who is the old vocalist, the guy who I replaced, he ran a coffee shop downtown called Bandit, and I was hanging out at Bandit one day. And he kind of came up to me. He's like, did the usual, hey, love you, what's up, bud? And he's like, let's take a walk outside. I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. And we go outside and sit on a bench. He's like, so I want to talk to you about something. He's like, we've got this tour coming up in, the late fall, early winter. I'm not going to be able to do it. I was like, okay. He's like, how would you feel about filling in for me since I can't make this tour happen? Because, he runs a business full time. He's a dad first as well. So totally understandable, but he was kind of overwhelmed at the time with everything. So he asked me, and it was totally a shock for me because I had not played heavy music in a long, long time.
Yeah.
So in my head, I'm like, can I even still do this? So it was surprising for him to ask me. But I ended up agreeing, and literally like 30 seconds after, I was like, yeah, sure, man. I think we could make that work. I'll talk to the rest of the guys, see what they say. And he's like, cool. So if you're good with that, he just like casually segued into, how would you feel about taking over full time? just like super nonchalant about it. And I was just like, what? Like, what's the score? What are we talking about? Like, so yeah, it was an interesting situation to say the least. But what ended up happening is we did a tour, my first tour with the band, obviously. Did a tour with Currents and another awesome band called Sentinels. Those are our boys from up in New England as well. Did a tour with Sentinels and Currents, just like a 2.5 week thing. And it went really well. I had rehearsed with the guys for, 2 or 3 weeks prior, just kind of getting my feet back into the water, so to speak. And it went super well. And we came home from that. And they did have, tryouts for other vocalists, which is obviously totally fair, because it was just like a fill-in opportunity for me. So they had a few other tryouts. There was kind of some in-between time, and then by January, maybe February of 2019, the label had kind of gone through everything else and seen the other tryouts and talked to the rest of the guys, and it ended up being me, which worked out great because, like I said, I was already friends with everybody. Yeah. We already knew each other. There wasn't like a weird feeling out process to go through. And I had already shown that, we could play those songs together. So it worked out great, honestly, man. And, 3 years and some change later, here we are.
Yeah. So you're
very happy.
Yeah. So your first like recorded work with the band was like the singles you guys released in 2020.
Yeah. Stare and Abandoned. Yep. Yeah, I had done. I had done a couple of vocal
the ones in 2019. Gotcha. Yeah.
Oh, those are in 2019. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'd done, I'd sent in a vocal tryout as well of, I got an instrumental track of Father Son and Abba, two of the tracks off their previous record, and I had done vocals on that as like a tryout.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first official release was that song Abandoned back in 2019.
Nice.
Let's take a moment of silence, a part of you that's left of me. My father told me, son, die fast and young, or everybody will stand away. You had to regret it, it makes you forget the place you stand. Frozen, you won't make it out of this. The lifeline is actually broken.
Yeah. How did the pandemic affect you guys? I mean, it affected everybody. It fucking sucks.
Oh, sure.
Be a musician.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was, being, not to harp on it too much, because like you said, it was rough for everyone in their own way. For me, it was definitely strange because we had just, we had gone on a handful of tours. We had just gotten off tour with Beartooth, and which was absolutely bananas. But yeah, we had gotten off of that tour in January of 2020, and then literally it felt like as soon as we got home, that's kind of when the shit hit the fan, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it was odd having that uncertainty after having, all that fun and success on the road of like, all right, this is what we're doing. We're getting into a groove. And then the whole world was just like, not today.
Yeah.
So it was tough for sure. I mean, to say the least. I think the hardest part was that uncertainty of not knowing if we would ever get to play again. As I'm sure it was with a ton of bands out there and other artists and things. That was definitely the most difficult part, and was also the reason my wife and I moved all the way up to North Dakota for a couple of years.
Oh, well.
Yeah, because I work on boats for a living, and they shut down the business because it wasn't like an essential business or whatever they called it.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, well, and let's head up north and save some money. So we did that, but I was I remember hearing talks of like people going back out on tour, like after a long stint of, the entire industry being quiet and in the dark. And I was like, oh, it kind of perked up a little bit. I was like, is this going to happen again? Like, is the world starting to kind of go back to normal? And, I'm really happy that, for the most part, everyone has done their part and, looked out for each other. And, especially in the United States as well as other parts of the world, because like we're back now to a sort of state of normalcy to a degree. But yeah, there was a period there where we had no idea if we'd ever be able to like be a band again.
Yeah.
So that was definitely something to kind of work through for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you guys been out on tour yet since things have kind of opened up, or is the one coming up your first one?
So we had gotten, we actually did a short run with Being as an Ocean. Back in January and February, they did a 10-year reunion tour for their Dear God album, which that was a lot of fun. Those are a bunch of sweethearts. Those guys were killer, as well as our friends in Castan. Yeah, great guys as well. But that was the first one after the pandemic. And you could tell every night on that tour, not only from like the band's perspectives, but like from the audience, there was a buzz in the air. You know what I mean? You could tell that people had been like hungry for shows. Yeah. And, I think that's what made it even better, is being able to go out on stage every night and have that kind of moment before we started of realizing like, dude, we didn't have this a couple of years ago. Like we had no idea that this was going to happen again.
Right.
And, that energy that we carried on the stage with us definitely kind of like spilled out into the crowd. And it was a lot of fun, man. It was a great time. It was a good comeback, especially, after being gone for so long. And like I said, people were all about it. Like whether it was 100 kids or 500 kids, it didn't really matter how many people were there, no matter the crowd size every night. Like you saw it on people's faces. They were 100% in,
Yeah, I've said to a couple people, it seems like with shows returning, like people are just like, we went without this. We're not taking it for granted. We're not standing in the back, arms crossed, being cool. We're all going to lose our shit and just have the best time possible, because it could go away again. Like we lost it. Like, and you can't take anything for granted. Like,
yeah, like you said, there were no cool guys in the back this time. There was not much of this going on.
Yeah,
like everybody was just losing it.
Yeah,
So,
which is awesome, which is great.
Yeah, man.
The 3 singles you guys released in 2020, was that the early part of an album that never got finished, or just demos you had kicking around, like something to like, hey, we're still a band and we have these things and people need something, or what?
Well, because we put out those 2 singles in 2019 that were really sort of just, I always compare it to like when Under Oath got Spencer and they did They're Only Chasing Safety. That was really sort of kind of a feeling out process for him as their vocalist.
Yeah.
And that's what those 2 songs were for us, was just kind of a feeling out process to see how we wrote together and, see the whole process behind things. But the EP in 2020, Only the Lonely Know, those were 3 songs that we had kind of written and reworked. I mean, we had other material, but we felt like those 3 together were the most cohesive. And those were the 3 songs that we really just kind of dove into deep and kind of wanted to show a new side of the band. Because they're definitely, in a different vein than say past releases, less of a off the wall post-hardcore vibe, more of like a polished, more accessible, kind of heavy, like a different kind of heavy. And that's kind of really what we wanted to shoot for. We kind of wanted to take things in a different direction. And those 3 songs, I feel like, were a good representation of like where the band was heading. Yeah. And looking back on it too, those 3 songs stacked up against, say, like Spirit Breaker, the single we released, a month and a half ago, with Coma Year as well. It's kind of like a continual flow of that new sound that we brought to the table. So I think that's kind of the direction we're going to keep things. That's
cool. Yeah. Coma Year, out June 24th. What was the inspiration? I noticed, like, listening to the record again this morning, more closely, like a lot of spiritual themes lyrically on this. Or spiritual language, maybe not themes, but spiritual language.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's, there are definitely things, because I was raised in a Christian household. I'm definitely by no means religious these days. That's kind of something that fell off like in high school era. But I've always found comfort in the duality of spirituality. Like there are certain themes and things that you hear in written works, that kind of transfer to a real life scenario. So it's not really spiritually themed. I just have a bad habit of like bringing up that style of writing in what I like to talk about. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, because there's not anything about God in there or anything like that. But like in Spirit Breaker, like in part of the bridge, I say, lay me down while holding on to your sins. That's just sort of just a way of me saying, like, give me all your problems. Like, I'll take those problems, but it has nothing to do with God. Yeah.
Or there's like a reference to the Holy Ghost and Coma Year, I think. Yeah. Is that one?
See.
Or
the Lonely Spirit, give up the ghost.
Yeah.
And the way that kind of, in layman's terms, plays out is like the lonely spirit is me, and give up the ghost is my dad's life. Because he passed away in 2015. So that was just a fancy way for me to convey those thoughts.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Sorry to hear about your dad. So I lost my father in 19. So
Oh man, I'm sorry, dude. I know that's, I've had a couple of other friends, unfortunately, that have lost parents, and it's not something that I can ever. Yeah, dude, it's not a good time.
Yeah.
And not to dwell on it, obviously, but it's one of those things that sticks with me, and I'm sure you can understand.
Yeah.
So and with a lot of subject matter in our music now, I can't help but write about him, or a feeling that is brought on from that experience. But I feel like that's good though, because that helps me heal. That's what a lot of this record that's coming out is healing.
Yeah.
It's kind of putting myself out there, just putting it all on the line, just saying like, this is what it is. And it's, like I said, it's therapeutic to listen back after we've finished these songs and to hear my own words. Because a lot of time I don't believe my own shit. You know what I mean? I'll write something and be like, yeah, dude, I'm totally okay. And then I'll like think about it and like, oh shit. I'm not okay. But yeah, this record that's going to be out in June is definitely therapy for me, for sure. Yeah.
And as a title, I don't know, the song you reference your father, but like Coma Year feels appropriate after like the last 2 years of pandemic and everything.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we thought about after the fact, because Coma Year actually refers to, like I said, I lost my dad in spring of 2015, and Coma Year for me personally refers to like spring of 2015 to 2016, so that year after losing him. However, like you said, the duality in it is that I feel like a lot of people are picking up on that phrase as the pandemic.
Yeah.
Which is totally cool, because I mean, during those 2 years, a lot of those old feelings definitely got drummed up again, not being able to express myself artistically and do the things I love and be with my friends and feeling isolated and everything like that. I mean, a lot of those old feelings definitely came back. So there is definitely a double meaning in that title.
Yeah. Who produced the record? And who's your engineer?
Yeah, our boy Chris Wiseman from the band Currents and Shadow of Intent, of course. We recorded everything with Chris at his studio. And after Chris got done working with us, we sent everything off to Caleb Shomo in Beartooth. So he did all the mixing and mastering and the additional production. And then there was also some production work from our good friend down in Florida, Matt Johnson, who's a guy we've worked with in the past on other releases. Just solid team all the way around. And I couldn't be happier with how things ended up coming out.
It's some of the like clean, like best sounding clean vocals I've heard on a like hardcore metalcore record. And
thank you, man.
Like it's up there. I don't know if you heard The City Is Ours. They're a UK band. They put out a record last year, and they're like metalcore, but like with boy band singing.
I'm into that.
Like I've never heard a metalcore song with a key change until last year, and it like fucking blew my mind. But like their clean vocals are so good. And when I was listening to the EP, I was like, these clean vocals are like so solid, and like, they sound great. And I was like, who did this?
Yeah. I'm gonna have to. You said The City Is Ours.
Yeah. They're on. What's the label? The German label. A Rising Empire. That's it. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out for sure. Yeah, I definitely draw a lot of influence from, and funny enough, in the last few years, I've definitely, and this is all Jordan, our guitar player's fault, I've definitely become a bit more of a pop fan. Like I'm a huge Justin Bieber fan now. And, like, Kid Laroi. Yeah, those are definitely my guilty pleasures on the road for sure. Yeah. Or like bands like The Midnight that are just straight like 80s pop.
Yeah,
I'm really into that stuff these days. But like I draw a lot of influence from like, do you ever get into Bayside back in the day? Yeah. Anthony from Bayside was a huge influence on me growing up, and Dustin from Thrice as well. Just because I really always loved like the, I don't even know how to describe it. I guess like the purity of his voice, like very gritty, but very just like controlled at the same time. So like those guys growing up, I was heavily influenced by.
Yeah, it's funny. Like on my phone, this is like all like metal on my phone, but like if you ask me what the most played vinyl record is in my house, it's Taylor Swift's 1989.
Hey,
and Frozen, but that's like my children. So.
Oh, that's fair. One of those snowmen.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was stuck in my head for a hot minute.
Yeah, all the time.
If I go before you, if the fire burns out, if the shadows envelop this house, our souls take a slow dance, but in reverse. I carved with my hands a sepulcher.
Well, you guys are going on tour with Greyhaven. That's a kind of duality in genres a little bit.
Yeah, I'm super stoked. Yeah, it's going to be Greyhaven. It's going to be like a co-headliner thing with us and them, and then the Callous Cowboys as well, which is this wild band out of Atlanta, which I know their vocalist Carson, he and I kind of played shows together in different bands in the Atlanta music scene for a while. So I'm super stoked for those guys as well. But I think a lot of times when I go to see live music, I get super stoked when there's kind of like a mixed bill like that, because you kind of get a little bit of everything in one night. You know, because we're definitely more on the metalcore side of things. You know, Greyhaven is just, well, first of all, they're sick, but they're very much in that like wild, chaotic post-hardcore vein. But which some of their new stuff coming out too has definitely got some catchier elements to it too.
They definitely have like really slick pop rock going on. It's like with great hooks. Yeah, they just pepper all that into the crazy. But yeah, I love those guys. I'm really excited for this tour because, like I said, you're going to get a little bit of everything every night on stage. I think people are really going to enjoy that. That's awesome.
I will. I'll be stoked to see them every night.
Yeah, that's rad. Are you guys just looking at this tour and then like letting whatever happens the rest of 2022 take shape, or are you already making plans? Are you looking at new music? Are you writing? What's going on? Can you say anything?
I mean, yes, and yes. As a short answer, I mean, we're always kind of looking forward, never looking past anything, but always looking forward to, you know, what our next move is going to be. We're definitely writing more tunes. That's something we kind of can't get away from. We're always constantly brainstorming ideas and shooting them back and forth, and, you know, seeing what comes next musically. But I mean, I would love to tour the rest of the year. Yeah, if that ends up being a thing, and, you know, we got some stuff in the works, so we'll see what happens. I'm really excited for this release. You know, like I briefly mentioned before, this was a big deal for us as a band in, you know, putting out something past that 3-song EP, like we mentioned earlier. But every song on this record, have you heard the whole thing, by the way? Yeah,
I got it. Yeah.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Oh, fancy.
Yeah.
So every song on that record is super close to my heart. Each one has kind of got a different theme to it. There's you know, everything's about a different personal experience. Now I don't want to say too much about the stuff that's not out yet, obviously, but I'm really happy because I feel like for the first time we have come together collectively as a band and written something that I think people will really kind of grab onto, because I do feel like it's accessible and relatable. And like I said, we try to just keep things real. Like, we didn't want to write any fluff. We didn't want any bullshit involved with, you know, the subject matter, or try to do something that we thought, let's just do this because people will like it. You know, we stayed true to ourselves for sure. And I'm really excited for this one because, you know, with songs like Spirit Breaker that were out already, that was, you know, a song about a friend of mine who had passed away from a drug overdose. And I had an outpouring of messages from people saying like, hey man, thank you for this song. You know, that, you know, they would reach out to me and tell me how much that meant to them to hear somebody else tell a story like that. And I hope the same for the rest of these songs too, because I feel like each track is a different story in itself. And, you know, hopefully people follow suit with that as well. Because that's, at the end of the day, you know, I wrote those songs lyrically for myself, but if it helps someone else, or it, you know, makes someone else feel a certain way, I mean, that's the biggest thing I can take from being a musician, is being able to share that, you know, through music. So I'm really excited for this record, and I hope that's kind of what comes of it. Yeah.
Awesome, man.
But yeah, June 24th. Buy it, stream it, pre-save it, Apple Music, Spotify, all that good stuff.
All the things.
Yeah.
All the things.
I'm breaking down, can't keep my feet off the ground, long enough to feel it all. Disintegrate. I sacrifice.
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.